So I have what I think a pretty cool hobby. So I have a hobby which means I drive insanely fast in a perfectly straight line across the salt flats to set world speed records. That's my hobby. And I do it in this vehicle you see here. It looks like a rocket. It's not the rocket. The name is KillaJoule, and it's technically a motorcycle. It's a motorcycle because it only has 3 wheels. So any vehicle that has 2 or 3 wheels is under international competition rules a motorcycle, no matter what it looks like. If it has 4 or more, then it becomes a car. So the KillaJoule is not just a motorcycle, it's a battery-powered motorcycle, and to be exact, it's the world's fastest electric motorcycle. And therefore, I am the world's fastest electric motorcycle racer. For a couple of years, I also was the world's fastest female motorcycle rider, but someone else took that record away from me, so I had to take it back. So you never own a record, you just borrow it for a longer or shorter time. So you may think, racing sounds rather wasteful. What on earth does that have to do with saving the planet? Well, we'll get to that in just a little bit. But first, a little bit of background. So 10 years ago, my husband Bill and I, we came up with a brilliant idea. We should build the world's fastest electric motorcycle. That sounds like fun, doesn't it? So I was in engineering graduate school at the time. When you're in engineering school, you have so much time and money to spare, right? Yeah, right, yeah. Yeah, that's a joke. When you are in engineering school or any demanding degree program, you have no life outside your studies. But the fact is, if you take an hour of work and you squeeze it in between your physics assignment and your math homework, and you do that every day for an extended period of time, you get a lot of work done. So I was lucky enough, I also had a husband, Bill, who still has the same husband, which I'm very lucky about. He worked an engineering job and collected an engineering salary, so together with my graduate stipend, we had a little bit more wiggle room than the average household budget to build this. But still, this was a major undertaking. So another alternative title for today could be How to Run a Large Project on a Shoestring Budget, because this is what it really turned out to be. So the absolutely biggest roadblock to setting world speed records is not the engineering. It's challenging, but it's doable. It's the money. So if you don't have the money, if you're short on money, you have to be long on clever. So if you can't buy it, you simply have to build it. And that's how we pulled this off. A large project like this always starts with a dream. In my case, the dream didn't have really anything to do with speed, believe it or not. The dream was in the heart of a tree hugger to promote electric cars. So I drive a Nissan Leaf. It's the best car I've ever had. I'm loving it. And electric cars are great, in particular here in New Zealand, when we have almost all renewable energy. Electric transportation is the way to go. You're stuck in Auckland traffic, you might as well not generate any tailpipe emissions. But this was 10 years ago, so this was before the success of Elon Musk and Tesla, and electric cars had a very dull image. You didn't want to get caught in an electric car. That was considered boring, slow, nerdy, and you would definitely go home alone from a party if you came in an electric car. That's not the case anymore, but you have to remember this is 10 years ago. So we wanted electric cars to show that electric cars actually are really good. So we thought, how can we change the image of electric vehicles? Well, the goal was to change the electric vehicle's image by building an electric vehicle that was so insanely fast that the gearheads would turn their heads and realize, oh, this is actually really cool. But buying a car is not a rational purchase. We think so, we convince ourselves that we are rational, but buying a car is all about the motion. So it also had to be sexy. Yeah, that's me, I clean up pretty well. So I'm a tree hugger at heart, and I really admire the Greenpeace activists. They board whale hunting vessels, they climb nuclear power plants, and that's really awesome bravery work. But I don't like the prospect of being arrested. That's just not my thing. So this was my way of doing eco-activism, and I came up with my own term for it. I call it eco-activism in disguise. So I'm still kind of the activist, but people just think I'm doing really cool racing stuff. And at 434 kilometers per hour, I get people's attention and I create those headlines just like Greenpeace. So how do you make a plan like this become reality? Well, first you start with a team. I have the best team. Bill, my husband, we are peas in the pods, joined at the hip, co-addicts, whatever you want to call it. We are in this together. This is what we live and breathe and spend all our time and money on. We also have some amazing volunteers. So we have had dozens of volunteers over the years, too many of them to mention all here today. But these guys and girls were the ones that I convinced to come with me, on their own expense, I may add, to the outbacks of Australia last year to set a new world record. Then you need a headquarters. This is our 2-car garage in Colorado, where I lived for 10 years before I came to New Zealand 3 years ago. Before that, I lived and I was born in Sweden, and now you understand where my funny accent comes from. The KillaJoule is 5.5 meters long because it was the longest vehicle we could fit in this space. So that kind of set the space of what the vehicle could be. In 2009, the concept of the KillaJoule was born. I think this is the kind of the equivalent of an ultrasound sonogram of a racing vehicle. This is the first very early CAD model of the vehicle. 2010, in February, I needed wheels and brakes for this motorcycle. Those are expensive parts. It was much cheaper to buy a motorcycle from Craigslist, that's the equivalent of TradeMe, or eBay. The seller asked me if I wanted to take this for a ride, and I said, you don't even need to start it. I'm just going to take the wheels and brakes. And we actually never started the motorcycle, but that was the donor for the KillaJoule. Then I called my friends. This is Clay. I said, we're building a Streamliner motorcycle. It will be fun. You should come. And this was spring break 2010 in the northern hemisphere. Colorado typically looks like this. And it did. And Clay made the trip all the way from California to Colorado to help us. During a week, we were cutting, grinding, welding, building. At the end of the week, we had the first KillaJoule chassis. We thought, oh, we're almost done. Of course not. That's maybe 1% into the build, but I got my very first test ride here. Then I continued to work, didn't have the money to buy this beautiful fiberglass composites bodywork, so I bought a Pilates ball, made my own composites. Quite a disaster, but it's a whole different story. Then I ran out of volunteers, so I recruited my mom to continue. And then I worked away. This is August. Here's the battery pack going in. It's starting to look like a motorcycle, kind of. 2 weeks before the scheduled race, which was September 2010, we took it for a first spin around the block. This was an early Sunday morning, a great way of meeting your neighbors, but it's completely silent, so we only met a couple of them. They're just curious what we were doing. As you can see in this picture, the KillaJoule only has 2 wheels. And then in addition to that, it has little landing wheels or training wheels that I put down at low speed. So the idea is you start out with these wheels down on the ground because you sit inside all strapped in. And then you get up to speed, find your balance, and you retract these wheels. Well, that didn't work, really. It was obvious just around the block that even at speed, it was just kind of leaning on this training wheel, and there was no hope I could get it to balance. So I wanted to throw in the towel. Bill said, there's no way. We have a race in 2 weeks, so we're going to go. But this kind of summarizes my feeling after my very first test drive. So we continued to work 4 days before we were going to leave. We still didn't have any cowling or body work. It was still half naked, this motorcycle. Again, I wanted to throw in the towel. Bill said, no way, there's no quitting here. Take this sheet metal, bend it over your knee. We will build body work. One day after we should have left, we actually left, and we made it to the Bonneville Salt Flats in Utah, in the US. So we lived in Colorado at the time, so this is only a day's drive away. We made it through technical inspection, which is a big deal. There are dozens of pages of safety rules that a vehicle like this has to follow. So just getting through that was a big victory. But just as I suspected, trying to get this motorcycle to balance on 2 wheels, I just couldn't do it. The jury is still out if it was me that was the problem or the motorcycle. I think it's a little bit of both. But the driver's compartment was so small that no one else could take it for a spin, so we didn't know. But we learned one important thing going to Bonneville, and that is that the motorcycle can have 3 wheels. So we went back home, worked another year, got some beautiful bodywork built by another volunteer instead of my Pilates ball, and we came back. On my birthday, we set a first world record at 222 kilometers per hour. I thought that was really fast at the time. And then we continue improving year by year, 300 kilometers per hour, 341, another world record, 387, a Guinness World Record. The best selfie I've ever taken, I just set the new world record selfie at 400 kilometers per hour. That was a big day. And my all-time best at 434, and that's how happy your volunteers are. And like I say, I was equally happy. So that was kind of how the world's fastest electric motorcycle came to be. So before I tell you the rest of the story and the new dreams, let's just take a moment and watch what it looks like to actually run for speed records at the Bonneville Salt Flats. So it's a 1.5-minute video concluding quite a few years of work. So the big question is, of course, did I save the planet? Well, you're laughing. And I don't know if the state of the planet really is anything to laugh about, but the fact that North America is on fire and the other half is underwater, there's clearly a lot left to do to save the planet. But I did set out to make headlines, to get people's interest in electric vehicles, and the fact that I get invited to this awesome TEDxUOA event means that I'm doing something that's creating an interest in electric vehicles. And I wanted headlines, I wanted covers, and here is just a few of the covers and headlines we have made over the years. So I think I did something at least. So my second title of my presentation was How to Run a Large Project on a Shoestring Budget. Well, if you want to do any, I'm sure you all have big dreams. So, and you want those dreams to come true. So I just have a few words on how would you run a big project like this. Well, first of all, you have to dream big. So there's no size limit for your dreams. You can dream as big as you want. Never let anyone tell you that you can't dream. However, you have to set a realistic goal. So we set a goal that was the fastest electric motorcycle, not the fastest motorcycle, the fastest electric car, fastest in the universe. And we had a date, that's September 2010. When you have set your goal, you have to make a slightly pessimistic plan, because no matter how pessimistic your plan is, it will end up becoming way overly optimistic in the end. Then you have to get into action. You actually have to work. So I would like to say, I'm a bit contrary to inspirational speakers. They say the power of your thoughts and so on. I always say your thoughts have no power, only your actions do. So you have to get into action if you want to create change. And then you cannot give up, no matter what. You can rest, you can take a break. And I have a rule, I work on my racing project at least 5 minutes every day. You will say 5 minutes won't get anything like this built. That's correct, but the 5 minutes gets me started, and it turns into an hour, 2, 3, 10, 12, and then I got a lot of work done. So that's how your dreams become reality. So the KillaJoule was the dream of the world's fastest electric motorcycle. We reached that goal. And of course, there's a new dream. There's always a new dream. And that's the world's fastest motorcycle, full stop. Because KillaJoule is the fastest electric motorcycle, but there are 11 more motorcycles in the world that are even faster that run internal combustion engines. So I want to beat that with electrics. So about a year and a bit ago, in July 2010, my new dream looked like a pile of steel tubing. But now we had 9 years of experience, so in probably a record-breaking speed, 6 months and 22 days, the KillaJoule's successor, Green Envy, was born. It was ready to be rolled into a container, which it was, sent off to Australia to make its debut on the salt flats there. The Green Envy is a 1,000 horsepower all-electric motorcycle, and it's built for 650 kilometers per hour. That would make it the world's fastest motorcycle overall. That record for the fastest motorcycle is currently sitting at 605, so I want to overshoot it a little bit. And also that's 400 miles per hour, which is a nice round number. The debut was planned for March 2020. We were there, Green and we were there, we were ready to go, and we all know what happened in March 2020. The world came to a screeching halt, and everything was canceled, and we went back, and the debut is postponed to 2021. Anyway, the goal is still, even if it will take another year, is to show that electric vehicles aren't slow or boring. So before I wrap up, I just want to show you a few numbers, because we all love numbers, and I typically get the question, what is the 0 to 100 kilometer per hour time? It's not that impressive, actually. This is about top speed, not about acceleration. Very lame compared to a Tesla. It will take about 8 seconds to get to 100. Getting to 650 just means you continue to accelerate. There are no gear shifting, so it's more like an airliner taking off. That will take about a minute to get to that speed. You would think this is really wasteful, but the fact is I have a battery pack that's about 20 kilowatt hours, same size as my Nissan Leaf, pretty much, and that energy it holds is equivalent of about 2 liters of petrol. So 650 kilometers per hour, 2 liters of petrol. But if I, instead of going 650 kilometers per hour, I went out on the motorway, it's not street legal, I couldn't do it, but if I could, if I was cruising for 100 kilometers per hour, I could go about 600 kilometers. So I'm twice as fast as a Tesla and about the same range. If we would take all these numbers and turn it into the government's recommended fuel economy labeling, we definitely get more than 6 stars. It should be like 60 stars, but they only are 6 stars. We will get an equivalent fuel economy of 0.37 liters per 100 kilometers. That's 10 times as good as a Prius. So that is super fuel efficient. So as you can see, electric vehicles is really the way to go. They can be super fast, they can be really sexy, and super fuel efficient. And with renewable energy, well, why wouldn't you want to drive an electric vehicle? Right. So that's all I want to say. Thank you so much, and I will just end up with saying flat out into the future. Thank you.